Hi, this is Scott from telecoms.com at 5G World, and I'm talking to Franz from Deutsche Telekom. Franz, I know you're doing a keynote later on. Given that we're at 5G World, let's just start off. Can you give me a sort of top line what your view is of what 5G needs to be, please?
Yeah, so hi Scott, big pleasure to be here. 5G, as we all know, is about to be the next big thing in communications. Honestly, I'm pretty impressed for a first-time event how big the thing here is. So what we see is there's huge interest, and we are also, I would say, as I was also involved in the 4G times, we are much more advanced in doing real things in 5G compared when we did 10 years ago. We did 4G, it was still much more an exercise on paper and standards, and we have now already seen in a couple of the exhibitions and the presentations, there are trials ongoing, so we are much more down to earth and much more on concrete things. Still, we also have certain agreement in the industry that 5G is much more than just an don't get my trust wrong, an evolution of mobile communications. It should be a complete system. It should cover a diverse set of use cases. But if you look what you see here, there's still quite a big focus on wireless and evolution of air interface, stuff like that, which is extremely important, don't get me wrong. But what we are still missing a bit is the overall system architecture, and especially how do you link to business, and how do you deliver something for the customer, which is much more than connectivity.
Okay.
That may be because, as we all know, in parallel there's still the big effort running on SDN and NFV, so moving to a more IT-like technology. Yep. In telecoms, of course, incorporating the specifics you need to run communication networks, reliability, availability, all these kind of things. But because we are not that stable there yet, that is probably, at least it's my guess, a reason why we are still more focusing on things where the industry is very, very comfortable with, and that's of course how you drive forward an air interface.
Yeah, and I got earlier on this year at the big sort of mobile trade show in February, I spoke to a lot of people and got a sense that there are two distinct arms of 5G. First is the one you're talking about, the air interface. We need to be moving up to an order of magnitude greater sort of speed, 1 gigabits per second, that sort of thing. And that, as you say, the sort of 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, we expect it to be much faster each time. But then there was a lot of talk for me about IoT. And of course, there's two things about IoT, a lot of which you've covered, which is how do we make it useful for businesses, for enterprise. And the other one is, of course, IoT requires a very sort of narrow bandwidth, very low energy, because you've got these embedded IoT sort of modules. So is this how you see it, that there's two basic forks in 5G? There's the high performance and then there's the IoT side?
There are, of course, these two. There's probably a third one, which we tend to call the verticals. And their life becomes even more interesting. I mean, life is really challenging here because for mobile broadband you need a very different system than for IoT, and especially narrowband IoT. As on the one side you still have a decent ARPU, let's say it like that, but for narrowband IoT per device you earn close to zero. Yeah. So very, very low numbers, and you still need to be profitable on that one. So you need a very different architecture here. But the third pillar really is what we call verticals. And that's all these industrial and integrated vertical players. And if you look there, the requirements are even more difficult. This is where low latency starts to become extremely important for some of them. Others say latency is a little bit less important, but reliability is extremely important. Some of them, of course, want to have both. And then it gets really challenging. Then you get a topic in there which is traditionally very difficult for telcos, which is global reach. Because if you have vertical customers, they usually don't work within one country. Exactly. They ask for global availability with still the same numbers, which is something which you can't deliver that easily. So there is much more to come. And that's something which you don't solve by only having a better radio, but you really need to think a lot about your system architecture, your software architecture in that point in time. And that's exactly where I think we still have much more work to do to really understand how do you build a system that can deliver in all these kind of dimensions. Yes, we have defined principles, network slicing, and there's quite a talk of it, but we're still stopping somehow on that level. So you need to get 2-3 levels deeper and really understand how do you build the architecture that runs in these slices and can fulfill on all these dimensions.
Okay, just one last question before we wrap up. You work for a European operator. As editor of Telekoms.com, I see a lot of stuff going on in the Far East and the US. Where do you think Europe is in terms of the road to 5G?
I think Europe is playing a significant role. Yes, we have some issues here, and that's as we know, not only on that level but on many levels. Many countries with quite many specific regulations, which make life difficult. So, if to stay competitive, we really need to have this one European market. Okay. Otherwise, we are simply too small and too fragmented. There is work going on. Yes, and that's our heritage. So there is also, of course, a lot of positive in it. Yeah. But for being significant on global scale on some areas, we need to be talking with one voice. Yeah. There is, of course, a lot going on, like 5GPP. So there is a certain drive from Europe, but there's for sure a room of improvement. But what we see, we are part of the game. We are significant, and this is extremely important. But this is not specific to 5G. It was already important for 4G. We need to have a global standard. If we don't achieve that, and it's also the danger with running ahead too much in certain areas, because they may go in a direction where the rest is not following. So we always need to have a very strong eye that in the end we come up with a global standard that really connects the global village, if you want to call it like that.
Great. Okay, thanks a lot, Franz.
My pleasure.
Well, that was Franz from Deutsche Telekom. You've been watching Telekoms.com TV.